A widowed rancher and his teenage son were ridiculed for inheriting what everyone called the most worthless piece of land in Texas, until they discovered something hidden beneath the floorboards that made the richest man in town's hands tremble with fear when he realized what he'd been trying to steal for decades. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more incredible tales of hidden treasures and family secrets. Marcus Sullivan stared at the crumbling wooden structure before him, wondering if his late brother had lost his mind before leaving him this disaster. The roof sagged dangerously, the walls tilted at alarming angles, and prairie grass had swallowed what might have once been a front yard. His 16-year-old son, Jake, kicked at a loose plank on the porch steps, and it crashed down with a hollow echo that seemed to resonate from deep underground. "This is what we drove 12 hours for?" bellowed Harrison Vale's voice across the dusty clearing, followed by the cruel laughter of his associates. That pile of rotting timber isn't worth the rusty nails barely holding it together. But Harrison's confident mockery wavered slightly when his eyes met those of elderly Rosa Martinez, who stood quietly at the edge of the small crowd. She studied the property with an expression that didn't match the others' amusement. Her weathered face held something closer to understanding and fear. Marcus noticed how quickly she looked away when their gazes met, how she whispered something urgent to her nephew before hurrying toward her truck, and he couldn't ignore that Harrison's harsh words carried an undertone of something else, something that sounded suspiciously like relief. As the group dispersed with their jeers and muttered comments about poor Marcus's worthless inheritance, Jake tugged at his father's work shirt. He pointed to something etched deep into the doorframe, symbols that appeared deliberately carved, not random damage from years of abandonment. The marks formed a precise pattern. Someone had taken great care to preserve these mysterious symbols, even as everything else deteriorated around them. Why would anyone maintain cryptic markings on a house they were supposedly abandoning? The Texas morning sun cast long shadows across the weathered boards as Marcus approached the sagging porch. 2 days of driving had led to this moment, and bitter disappointment filled his mouth as he surveyed what his brother had left behind. The structure looked ready to collapse with the next strong wind. Jake ran ahead, his work boots echoing strangely on the hollow-sounding wooden planks. He stopped abruptly at the front door, tracing the carved symbols with his finger. "Dad, these don't look like animal scratches or weather damage." Marcus joined him, kneeling to examine the deliberate cuts in the wood. The marks formed a distinctive pattern, 5 parallel lines intersected by 3 diagonal ones, carved deep and precise. Someone had invested considerable time and effort to make these marks permanent. Probably just some old cattle brand, he said, though something about the precision troubled him deeply. Harrison Vale's voice boomed from behind them. "Still admiring your mansion, Sullivan?" He climbed onto the porch uninvited, his expensive boots contrasting sharply with their worn work boots. "My father offered to buy this land from your brother 18 years ago. A smart man would have accepted that offer." "Maybe there was a good reason he didn't sell," Marcus replied evenly. Harrison's laugh was sharp and forced. "Reason? Look around you, man. This place isn't fit for cattle, let alone people." But his eyes darted nervously toward the carved symbols, and he stepped back from the door. "Ground's too rocky for crops, too isolated for any real business. Your brother was a stubborn fool who died broke." Jake tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, why does the ground sound different here?" He was absolutely right. When Harrison had stomped across the porch, certain areas produced a deeper, more resonant sound than others. Marcus tested it himself, walking slowly across the boards. Near the center, his footsteps echoed as if there was a vast, empty space beneath. "Just old wood settling," Harrison said quickly, but sweat appeared on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Look, Sullivan, I'll make you the same offer I made your brother. $1,000 for this worthless plot. Take the money and find yourself proper land somewhere else." The offer was generous, suspiciously generous for property Harrison claimed was worthless. Marcus studied the man's face, noting how his confident smirk never quite reached his calculating eyes. "I appreciate the offer, but we just arrived. Give us time to settle in and look around." Harrison's jaw tightened visibly. "Time's a luxury you can't afford out here. Winter's harsh in this territory, and this place won't shelter a dog, let alone a teenager." His gaze fixed on Jake with something that might have been concern or calculation. "Think about what's best for your son's future." After Harrison rode away in his expensive truck, Jake pressed his ear to the floorboards. "Dad, there's definitely something underneath. It sounds huge." Marcus knelt beside him, and his heart began to race. Jake was absolutely right, but what could be hidden beneath a supposedly abandoned ranch house? And why was Harrison so desperate to buy land he claimed was completely worthless? The wooden boards groaned under their weight as Marcus searched for loose planks. His hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from the growing certainty that they were on the verge of discovering something significant. Jake found it first. Near the back corner of the main room, one board shifted when he stepped on it. "Here, Dad." Together, they pried up the loose planks, revealing a narrow opening that led into darkness below. The smell that rose from the gap was dry and dusty, but carried an underlying scent of worked stone rather than earth. "It's not just a root cellar," Marcus whispered, lowering himself through the opening. His boots touched solid stone after dropping only 8 feet. "Jake, hand me that flashlight from the truck." The light revealed a carefully constructed underground chamber with walls lined with smooth stones fitted together without mortar. This wasn't some hastily dug hideout. Someone had invested serious time and skill in its construction. Shelves carved directly from the rock walls held wooden crates, all bearing the same 5-line symbol they'd seen carved into the doorframe above. Marcus opened the nearest crate with careful hands. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay stacks of official-looking documents tied with ribbon. The papers were in excellent condition despite their obvious age. As he unfolded the first document, his breath caught in his throat. "Dad, what is it?" Jake called from above. "It's a survey map," he said, his voice barely steady, "of water rights, the whole aquifer system that runs under this territory." He opened another document. "And this is a contract for oil drilling rights to deposits that weren't even discovered until 5 years ago." More documents revealed land deeds to property scattered across 4 counties, all signed by various members of his uncle's name. But these weren't just any properties. They were strategic locations along the underground water system and above untapped oil reserves. A folded paper tucked between the deeds caught his attention. His brother's handwriting covered the page in careful script. "To my brother Marcus, if you're reading this, it means Harrison Vale finally found a way to get someone into this house. The carved marks above match the ones in this chamber. They mark every location where I've secured rights that he's been trying to claim for 20 years. The man thinks I died poor, but I died protecting wealth he'll never understand the value of." The aquifer shifts direction next year due to new mining operations upstream. When it does, every property marked with our family symbol will control the only reliable water source for 80 miles in any direction. The oil deposits beneath these lands will be accessible with new drilling technology arriving next spring. Trust no one in town until you've secured all the documents in the lawyer's office in Austin. Harrison has friends everywhere, but not there. Your brother, David. Marcus's hands shook as he read the final line. "He'll try to force you out before you discover the truth. Don't let him." Heavy footsteps echoed across the floor above them, multiple sets of boots moving with purpose toward the loose boards they'd left exposed. "Well, well," Harrison's voice drifted down through the opening. "Looks like our new neighbors have been doing some exploring." Marcus quickly stuffed the most important documents inside his jacket, his heart pounding as Harrison's boots moved closer to the opening above. 4 other sets of footsteps accompanied him. This wasn't a friendly social visit. "Dad," Jake whispered, pressing close to his side in the dim chamber. "Stay quiet and stay behind me," Marcus breathed, then called up through the opening. "Just checking the foundation, Harrison. House seems solid enough." A harsh laugh echoed down. "Solid? That's rich coming from a man standing in an illegal excavation." Harrison's voice took on a threatening edge. You've been on this property less than 2 days, and you're already trespassing on mineral rights that don't belong to you. Marcus climbed up through the opening, helping Jake up after him. 5 men stood in his brother's house, Harrison and 4 others he didn't recognize. All wore gun belts but kept their hands visible. This was intimidation, not violence yet. "This is my property now," Marcus said evenly. "I have the deed." "Deeds can be contested," said a tall man with a sheriff's badge pinned to his vest, "especially when there's evidence of prior claims. I'm Sheriff Davis from Millfield County. Mr. Vale here has filed a complaint about unauthorized mining on disputed land." Marcus felt the documents crinkle against his chest. "There's been no mining. We're just settling into our inheritance." "That chamber below suggests otherwise," Harrison said, gesturing toward the exposed opening. "Looks like someone's been mighty busy down there. Question is, was it your brother or you?" The sheriff nodded gravely. "Either way, I'll need to inspect what's below. Make sure nothing's been taken that shouldn't have been." Marcus's mind raced. If they searched the chamber, they'd find the empty spaces where he'd removed the documents. But if he refused, they'd know he was hiding something significant. "Of course," he said, stepping aside, "though I should warn you, it's just an old storage room, pretty disappointing after all this fuss." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "We'll be the judge of that." As the sheriff descended into the chamber with his flashlight, Harrison moved closer to Marcus. "You seem nervous, Sullivan. Maybe it's because you know something you shouldn't." "Just wondering why you're so interested in my worthless property," Marcus replied. "Simple neighborly concern," Harrison said. "This land has a history of disputes. Men have died for less around here." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen to your boy." The threat hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stepped between Harrison and Jake, his hands clenching into fists. Sheriff Davis emerged from below, brushing dust from his clothes. Nothing but empty shelves and old stonework. Whoever built it knew what they were doing, but there's nothing valuable down there now. Harrison's jaw tightened with frustration. Nothing? Dry as a bone. If there ever was anything worth finding, it's long gone. But Marcus noticed how the sheriff's eyes lingered on him with calculation. Something in the man's expression suggested he knew exactly what had been removed from those shelves and that he wanted to make a deal. After Harrison and his men left, Sheriff Davis lingered behind. He sent Jake outside to tend their horses, then turned to face Marcus with a calculating expression. "You're not as green as you look, Sullivan. Smart man would have left those documents where he found them." The sheriff's hand rested casually on his gun belt. Smarter man would realize he's in over his head. Marcus kept his face neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." Davis walked to the window, watching Harrison's group ride toward town.
"Been sheriff here for 12 years. Seen enough land disputes to know when someone's sitting on something valuable." He turned back to Marcus. "Your brother was clever. I'll give him that. But cleverness can get a man killed if he's not careful. Is that a threat?" "It's practical advice." Davis moved closer, lowering his voice. "Harrison Vale owns half the businesses in 5 towns. He's got judges, lawyers, and lawmen in his pocket. Man like that doesn't make offers on worthless land." Marcus felt the documents pressing against his ribs. "What are you proposing?" "Partnership. You give me whatever papers you found down there. I make sure you and your son stay safe. We split whatever they're worth 60-40, and if I refuse?" The sheriff's smile was cold. "Then I arrest you for theft of mineral rights. Take your boy to state custody while you await trial. Lot can happen to a man in jail before his case comes up."
Jake's voice drifted through the window as he talked softly to the horses. The sound strengthened Marcus's resolve. "Those documents prove my brother's legal ownership. There's nothing stolen about them." "Legal's a flexible word around here," Davis said, "especially when it comes to water and oil rights. You have any idea what those papers are really worth?" Marcus remained silent, but his expression must have given something away. "Of course you do. Smart enough to grab them, smart enough to understand their value. The sheriff leaned against the wall. Aquifers shifting direction next spring. Every rancher and farmer for 100 miles will need water rights or watch their land turn to dust. Your brother figured that out 20 years ago. So Harrison knows about the aquifer. Harrison suspects. But suspicion ain't proof. And proof is what you're carrying. Davis straightened up. Here's what's going to happen. I'm giving you 24 hours to think over my offer. After that, I come back with a warrant and tear this place apart. He headed for the door, then paused. Your brother thought he was protecting something precious. All he did was paint a target on anyone who inherited it. Don't make his mistake. After the sheriff rode away, Jake came inside with worry creasing his young face. Dad, that man scared me. His eyes were mean. Marcus knelt down to his level. We're going to be fine, son. But we need to take a trip tomorrow. Where? To see a lawyer in Austin. Your Uncle David left us some instructions. As darkness fell, Marcus realized they weren't alone. Through the window, he could see the flicker of a campfire in the distance. Someone was watching the house, making sure they didn't slip away in the night. The trap was closing around them, and they had less than 24 hours to escape it. Marcus waited until the early hours before dawn when the distant campfire had burned down to glowing embers. The watchers would be drowsy, their attention drifting in the cold pre-morning darkness. He had spent the night planning their escape route. The direct road to Austin would be watched, but there was an old cattle trail that wound through the rocky hills behind the house. It would take longer, but it might keep them hidden until they reached the main highway. Jake, wake up, he whispered, gently shaking his son's shoulder. We need to leave now, very quietly. Jake dressed quickly without questions, understanding the seriousness in his father's voice. Marcus had packed only essentials, water, food for 3 days, and the precious documents secured inside his jacket. Their horses were kept in a small lean-to behind the house, hidden from the watcher's direct line of sight. As they led the animals away from the structure, every small sound seemed magnified in the stillness. A horse's snort, the creak of leather, the soft scrape of hooves on stone. Each noise made Marcus's heart race with fear of discovery. They had traveled perhaps 3 miles along the winding trail when Jake pulled up beside him. Dad, I hear horses behind us. Marcus listened intently. The distant sound of hoofbeats echoed off the canyon walls, growing steadily closer. Multiple riders moving fast and with purpose. They found our trail, he said grimly. We need to find cover. The path ahead offered little concealment, just scattered boulders and sparse brush. But to their right, a narrow ravine cut deep into the hillside. It looked like it might lead to higher ground, where they could see their pursuers. They urged their horses down into the rocky depression, the animals picking their way carefully over loose stones. The ravine gradually widened, opening into a small canyon with steep walls on both sides. It was perfect cover and a perfect trap. Mr. Sullivan, Sheriff Davis's voice echoed from the canyon mouth behind them. No need to make this harder than it has to be. Just bring those papers back and we can settle this peacefully. Marcus counted at least 5 distinct voices among the riders. Harrison was there too, his anger clear even at a distance. Should have taken my offer when you had the chance, Sullivan. The canyon ahead appeared to dead end at a wall of red stone. They were cornered with nowhere to run and no way to fight 5 armed men. Marcus's mind raced through their dwindling options. Jake pointed toward the canyon wall. Dad, look, there's a gap. He was right. What had appeared to be solid rock was actually 2 massive boulders leaning against each other, creating a narrow passage barely wide enough for a horse and rider. It was dangerous. If the rock shifted, they would be crushed. But it might be their only chance. Follow me and stay close, Marcus said, spurring his horse toward the gap. Behind them, the sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder. They had perhaps 3 minutes before Harrison and the sheriff reached the canyon floor. The passage beyond the rocks was dark and unknown, but it had to be better than certain capture. The passage between the boulders was treacherous, barely wide enough for their horses. Loose rocks scattered under the animals' hooves, and Marcus held his breath as they squeezed through the narrow gap. Behind them, angry voices echoed off the canyon walls. They emerged onto a high plateau that overlooked the surrounding territory. In the distance, the city of Austin was visible as a cluster of buildings beside a winding river. But between them and safety lay miles of open ground where they would be easily spotted. "We can't outrun them on flat land," Marcus said, studying their pursuers through the gap in the rocks. "We need another plan." Jake pointed toward a thin column of smoke rising from a hidden valley below the plateau. "Someone's down there, Dad." Marcus hesitated. Taking refuge with strangers could mean walking into another trap, but staying exposed on the plateau would certainly mean capture. They descended through a winding trail that led to a small homestead tucked between protective hills. An elderly woman emerged from a modest cabin, a rifle held steady in her weathered hands. "That's far enough," she called out. "State your business." "Mrs. Martinez." Marcus recognized the woman who had watched them so intently at the inheritance gathering. "We need help. Sheriff Davis is hunting us for something that belongs to us legally." Rosa Martinez lowered her rifle slightly, her sharp eyes studying their faces. "You're David's nephew. Should have known Harrison wouldn't wait long before making his move." "You knew my brother?" "Knew him well enough to know he was planning for this day." She gestured toward her cabin. "Get those horses out of sight. We don't have much time." Inside the small but tidy home, Rosa poured them water while keeping watch at the window. "Your brother came to see me 4 months before he died. Said Harrison was getting desperate, making threats. David knew he needed insurance." She moved to an old trunk in the corner and withdrew a thick envelope sealed with wax. "He asked me to hold this for whoever inherited his property. Said it contained proof that would settle the matter once and for all." Marcus broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside were copies of every document he had found in the underground chamber, along with additional papers he hadn't seen before. Legal correspondence with state authorities, surveys conducted by government engineers, and most importantly, a signed agreement from the state governor recognizing his brother's exclusive water and mineral rights. "These are official copies," Rosa explained, "filed with the state registry in Austin. Harrison can't claim these are stolen because they're part of the public record." A new document caught Marcus's attention, a letter of complaint filed by his brother against Sheriff Davis for accepting bribes from Harrison Vale. The letter was dated just 3 weeks before his brother's death. "He was going to expose them," Marcus said quietly. "And they knew it." Rosa's expression was grim. David was a careful man, but even careful men can have accidents when powerful people want them silenced. Through the window, dust clouds on the horizon marked the approach of their pursuers. They had perhaps 15 minutes before Harrison and the sheriff discovered the homestead. But now, Marcus had everything he needed to fight back. The question was whether they could reach Austin alive. Rosa Martinez handed Marcus a worn leather satchel. "There's a back trail that leads directly to the state highway. Take it. I'll delay them here as long as I can." "We can't leave you to face them alone," Marcus protested. "I've been dealing with Harrison Vale longer than you've been alive, son. Besides, someone needs to get those documents to the Attorney General before Davis can have them destroyed." Her weathered face was resolute. "Your brother trusted me to see this through. I won't let him down." Marcus and Jake mounted their horses and followed the narrow path Rosa indicated, winding through dense brush that concealed them from view. Behind them, they could hear voices as their pursuers reached the homestead. The trail was treacherous, barely wide enough for a single horse, but it led steadily toward the main highway. After 2 hours of careful riding, they emerged onto the state road just 5 miles from Austin. The Attorney General's office was located in the state capitol building in the center of the city. A stern-faced woman with graying hair listened intently as Marcus spread the documents across her desk. "These are serious allegations," the Attorney General said, examining the official seals and signatures. "If authentic, they prove fraud on a massive scale." "They're authentic," Marcus assured her, "filed with the state registry." The Attorney General nodded gravely. I've suspected Sheriff Davis of corruption for some time, but never had sufficient evidence. This complaint from your brother, combined with these forged documents Harrison's been using." She looked up sharply. "Where is Davis now?" "Following us. He'll be here soon." "Good." The Attorney General opened her desk drawer and removed a loaded pistol. "I have federal agents arriving this afternoon to investigate reports of corruption in this county. It seems we can present them with their first arrests." Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Harrison Vale burst through the door without knocking, Sheriff Davis and 3 deputies close behind him. "Attorney General, we're pursuing a thief who's stolen valuable property from Mr. Vale," Davis announced, his hand resting on his gun. "Actually, Sheriff, you're under arrest." The Attorney General rose from her chair, pistol steady in her grip, for accepting bribes, falsifying legal documents, and conspiracy to defraud. Harrison's face went pale. "This is ridiculous. You can't prove anything." On the contrary, the Attorney General gestured to the spread documents. "We can prove everything. Your forged mineral rights claims, the bribes paid to Sheriff Davis, even your attempts to intimidate legitimate property owners." Davis reached for his weapon, but the Attorney General's gun was already trained on him. "I wouldn't recommend it, Sheriff. Federal agents are due here this afternoon, and I'd prefer to hand you over alive." One of the deputies stepped forward. "Ma'am, we didn't know about any of this. Davis told us we were chasing claim jumpers." "Then you'll testify to that effect at his trial," she replied. "Meanwhile, you can help me place both these men under arrest." Harrison made a desperate lunge for the documents on the desk, but Marcus intercepted him, knocking the man to the floor. The fight was brief. Harrison was soft from years of easy living, while Marcus had been hardened by honest work. As the dust settled, Sheriff Davis sat in handcuffs while Harrison nursed a bloody nose and bruised pride. 8 months later, Marcus stood on the rebuilt porch of what was now a thriving ranch house. The spring had been dry, just as his brother had predicted, and the aquifer had shifted course exactly as the government surveys indicated it would. Every morning, ranchers and farmers lined up at his gate to negotiate water rights from the wells that now accessed the redirected underground river. The same men who had mocked his worthless inheritance now treated him with the respect due to the most important landowner in 5 counties. Jake ran up the steps, his arms full of school books he'd brought home from the new private academy in Austin. At 17 now, he had grown confident and strong, no longer the frightened teenager who had clung to his father's side during their desperate flight. "Dad, Mr. Peterson wants to know if we can extend his water contract through the summer drought," he said, settling his books on the table. "Tell him we'll discuss terms tomorrow," Marcus replied, smiling at his son's head for business. Jake had become his unofficial assistant in managing the water and oil rights that had made them wealthy beyond his brother's wildest dreams. A rider approached from town, Deputy Marshal Williams, who had replaced Sheriff Davis after the federal investigation. "Morning, Mr. Sullivan. Thought you'd want to know Harrison Vale's appeal was denied yesterday, and 25 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy." The marshal accepted a glass of iced tea from Jake. "Davis got 20 years. Both men will be old and broken when they get out, if they live that long." Marcus felt no satisfaction in their punishment, only relief that the threat was finally ended. What about their victims? The other families they cheated? Federal court ordered full restitution. Harrison's assets are being divided among everyone he defrauded over the years. Some folks are getting their land back after decades of fighting. After the marshal left, Marcus walked down to the main well that had transformed their lives. The water pumped clear and constant, fed by the underground river his brother had discovered decades earlier. Every drop was precious now, worth more than gold in a territory gripped by the worst drought in 50 years. Rosa Martinez appeared on the path, carrying a basket of fresh bread. At 78, she had become like a grandmother to Jake and a trusted advisor to Marcus. Her knowledge of the territory's history had proved invaluable in establishing their water and mineral rights claims. "How are the negotiations going?" she asked, settling on a bench Marcus had built beside the well. "Better than expected. We'll have enough income to last several lifetimes, and we're helping genuine farmers and ranchers survive the drought." "Your brother would be proud," she said. "He always said the land should serve the people who work it honestly, not the men who try to steal it through corruption." That evening, as Jake studied for his college entrance exams by lamplight, Marcus reflected on their journey from desperation to prosperity. They had inherited more than land and mineral rights. They had inherited the responsibility to use their fortune wisely. The broken-down ranch house had been rebuilt into a comfortable home. The underground chamber now served as a secure office where they kept their business records, and the carved markings above the door had been restored and highlighted with brass inlay, a proud symbol of their family's perseverance. Harrison Vale had been wrong about one thing. David Sullivan hadn't died poor. He had died rich in the things that truly mattered: family loyalty, moral courage, and the wisdom to prepare for the future. Now that legacy lived on in Marcus and Jake, and would continue for generations to come. The old ranch that everyone had mocked as worthless had become the foundation of a fortune built on their family's determination to protect what was rightfully theirs. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind whistled through the rebuilt walls, Marcus could swear he heard his brother's voice whispering words of approval from wherever honest men go when their work on earth is done.